Okay, so we have to fix a few things today before we get started. First thing is, well, let me just show you what the problems are. If you remember from last time, we had this problem where Pop was rebounding off Katch too shallowly. So here's the problem. I think we put some debug code in there. See how it's got caught up right there? And then it goes off on an angle that's too sharp. See, that's too sharp of an angle, and you can't get underneath it. If we remember, we added some debug code in so we could see the angles. And we're not supposed to go at an angle greater than 150. And notice we got 153.01, which is too sharp of an angle. On the other side, anything less than 50 is bad news. So we need to change our code so it doesn't go off at such an angle. But then the other problem is if you hit it right there, see how he's getting stuck and then speeds up super fast? That's a problem. So we've got to solve that problem too. See right there? Now I've got it trapped. It shouldn't be able to do that, okay? And then it flies off and you can't get to it. So a couple issues with the, quote, physics. Again, we're doing our own physics. We're not relying on the physics engine that comes with GameMaker. Again, we're not trying to be super accurate. We do have to fix those problems. So how do you go about fixing those? Well, let's look at that collision event between Katch and Pop. So let me zoom in so we can see this. Okay, so we have our fancy equation, and then, or we print out the value of that equation, and then we set the angle. We're getting angles. When Pop hits the side of Katch instead of the top of Katch, we're getting numbers that we don't want. So how do we solve that? Well, we're setting the direction here, but there's nothing to say that we can't mess with the direction before we get out of this collision event. And so what I would suggest is we could ask a question. So let's ask that question right here. And the question is, well, what direction are we going? So we can just type in direction. Now, it's super important that you type in direction and you spell it correctly, because that's the name of a built-in variable. That's the direction which Pop is headed. Okay, if you misspell it, then it's going to crash. And we want to say if the direction is less than or equal to 50, that means it's going too shallowly to the right. What we want to do is, instead of letting it go lower than 50, we want to just set it to 50. So we're setting a hard-coded kind of limit. And so all you have to do here is do a set variable and drag it to the right of this if statement. And again, our variable is direction. But now, instead of asking which direction we're going, we're saying we're going to set it. If it's 50 or lower, we're going to just set it to 50 and make sure that it can't go lower than 50. And this is what was suggested by a student last time, and this is a good idea, so we're going to do it this way. Now, I'm perfectly open for student suggestions if you have a better way of doing something. I'm not one of those teachers that gets all bent out of shape when you tell me I'm wrong. I'm not that arrogant. And so you can tell me I'm wrong, or if you have a better way, please feel free to share. If I think it's my way is better and yours better, we can have a discussion about it, and then everyone can learn about what I'm thinking and what you're thinking. I actually like those kind of conversations. I had a college professor who I questioned once, and boy, that person did not like being questioned by a student. So I promised myself that I wouldn't be that way if I ever became a teacher. And look, I'm a teacher now. It was during a teacher class too. And so now we have to do the other side. We have to do the left side now. So what's the angle we're looking for on the left side? Well, we want to see if it's greater than or equal to 130. 130 seems to be a fair limit on the left side. So if it's greater than 130, then we're going to set that direction again. Okay, you're going to have to type direction in carefully each time. and we're going to set it equal to 130. So if it's greater than 130, it's too sharp of an angle going to the left. And now, and make sure those two if statements are at the same level. They're not, make sure they're indented the same way. You ask this one, and then right after that, you ask that one. Otherwise, just go with whatever you calculate. So now if I try this, hopefully you'll be able to see. Let me just drag this on. So if I take a really shallow angle here like that, well, let's see. Still gets stuck, but notice that the sharpest angle it leaves pop at is well within our, see, some of these. Now you can actually play the game and you're not going to get messed up. See, that sharpest angle is only going to be 50 degrees. We do have to fix the problem where it's getting stuck, though, so let's do that next. So I found the best way to do that. What's happening is the collision is happening over and over. If you look at our data here, here's our data. See how the collision happens hundreds of times? When pop is moving into, or Katch is moving into pop, and they crash into each other, and pop or Katch continues to collide with it over and over again. We've got to stop that or we get a million of these collision events. Yeah. Yeah, it's fine. You're just going to miss this next part, but I am filming it. So yeah, yeah, that's right. Okay, so kind of a kludgy way to fix this, and maybe you haven't heard that word before, but a kludge is, it's not ideal. It's kind of, you do it because you have to, not because you want to, kind of solution. So here you would say set speed. Let's just say speed. Okay. So we're not going to set the speed of Katch or pop. We're going to set the speed of Katch. And let's put it after the set speed of pop. Remember, we're in the collision event with pop and Katch. Katch is the other thing. So you want to make sure you set this to other, not self. That other thing is Katch. And what we want to do is stop Katch from moving so it doesn't keep trying to push into a pop. And that way we will only get one collision event. Now the user's not really going to notice this. It's only going to stop momentarily, and then the next key press event will come in and then we'll keep it moving. So I doubt that the user will see any change in behavior other than hopefully pop won't get stuck anymore. So I'm going to try to recreate that problem where I'm crashing into it from the side. See, now it shouldn't get stuck, and the angles should stay playable. Let's try this. I'm going to try to crash into it. Bonk. See, now it's not getting stuck anymore. Even at an acute angle, like right there, or right there, well, maybe right here. See, it's not getting stuck, and that took me about 4 hours to figure out how not to get it stuck. Be glad I'm not one of those teachers that expect you to solve all the problems. Because some of these are really hard to solve. Not that I doubt your ability. Some of you could solve these problems. But anyway, now we have this working now, this mechanic of pop bouncing off Katch. We've limited the angles, and we've made it so it doesn't get stuck. There's still a problem here in the corner. If you can get pop in the corner and you trap them, then things don't go well. I'm not sure what to do there, so I'm trying to figure that out. But it's hard to recreate, right? Okay, so this is what it should look like then when you're done, do this equation. Again, the equation is object underscore Katch dot x minus x plus 90. Set the direction. We're just adding a little bit of speed to pop each time it hits Katch to get it a little bit more height. And then we're going to stop Katch anytime it collides, just so we don't get stuck. And then we make sure the direction is between 50 and 130. Anything outside of that range will get modified. Yeah? Oh, it's an error. Okay. Let's look at that. Let me stop the video. So monsters. Well, we're adding new objects to our game. So the first thing we normally do when we're adding new objects is create sprites for them. Ooh, before we do that, we need to talk about something. Yeah. Let's talk about this. So we're adding monsters to our game. It looks like whenever you shut the screen off, you lose your. Hopefully, my recording will continue in the right place. I'm not sure if that will do, but we'll see. Let me. I don't want to have to record this again, but I guess we'll just keep going. All right. So let's create those sprites now. There's only 2 sprites, but we have 4 objects. The first sprite, we'll call this one sprite. The book calls it BigLeg. And I say the book. There's an old ancient book that these games are first published in, using older versions of GameMaker. And what we're trying to do is update them. So it's called a BigLeg with no underscore. So sprite underscore BigLeg. Now you have to be careful here. This is an animated sprite. Notice how the animation speed is set to 15, which is what we want. So we say import, and we want to go out to our classes folder. Here's our classes folder. That would be your S drive. Oh, that's my W drive. But here, go out to the Rainbow Reef folder, chapter 6, and that's where all the pictures are. Now, if your pictures aren't showing up, you can go up here and change this to like medium icons. You can see your pictures. The one we want is this guy, BigLeg. Okay, so there it is. It's got tons of frames. There's a total of 24 frames. But notice how our animation speed got overwritten. That's a mistake. Okay, it shouldn't do that. But make sure to set it back to 15. And then we have to get rid of this background color thing again. So we go to Edit Image. Select the first one here on the strip, and then go all the way to the end, and then hold down your Shift key and select the last one. And that selects all of them, I think. And then what you can do is you can get rid of that. So this fourth one, and Color Removal Tool, that one, click it. It should take care of it on all of it. Notice it didn't, right? Notice it only did those and not those. So evidently there's a limit on how many it can do. And this happened the last time I tried it too. So I'm trying to get rid of that color. And now it's gotten rid of. If I go back to the sprite and play the animation now, we can see it kind of pulsates creepily. Okay. There's really only 2 frames. Why they needed 24 frames to do 2 frames, I don't know. It would be simpler to just have 2 frames and just set the animation speed really low. But anyway, that's our monster. The next sprite we're going to need is just a smaller version of this one. So we could just make it smaller, or we could use the sprite that's there. So let's just do that. We say create sprite. This one's called, and this is a funny name. I'm sorry about the name, but SPR underscore BigLeg underscore small. It's kind of contradictory. But it's a smaller version of the BigLeg. We want to import that. And here it doesn't look smaller, but it is smaller. It's a little smaller, I guess. And again, it overrode our animation speed, so we'll set our animation speed to 15. Like the first one, it has 24 frames. I'm going to see if I can get this to work. Holding down Shift. I'm thinking I'm selecting all of them. I got them all selected. Oh, I'm not in edit mode, that's why. So let me go to edit. Let me try that again. So edit, click on that one, go all the way to the end, And my hope is that they're all selected. Looks like they are. So if I choose that and click here, yeah, it actually worked that time. So I'm not sure why it didn't work before. And again, to us it looks like it's the same size, but it is much smaller because we're zoomed in a bit. So if we go back here and we play it, it wiggles. Okay? So we have our sprites. Let's now make our objects out of these things. Here's our first object. Now we have 4 objects. This will be the parent object. So this is object BigLeg. Okay. And again, we just used the sprite we created just now. Be careful on these. Object BigLeg. And it just has to exist, I guess. Okay? Because we're going to put all the other events in the other objects. So object BigLeg is going to be the parent. So we don't set the parent here. It doesn't have a parent. But all the other ones will have to have their parent set. So let's try the next one. So create object. And this one, we'll make this the stationary smaller BigLeg. So obj underscore BigLeg underscore small. And we'll choose that sprite. Not this one, but this one. It is actually small. It's only 40 by 40 instead of 80 by 80. But here it's super important to set the parent. Make sure the parent is set to object BigLeg, so that all the events that are associated with object BigLeg gets associated with this smaller version of it. Okay. All right, so that's 2 of them down. And then let's create the other 2. These are the moving ones. So we'll create this one. Let me see if I can get this on your screen so you can see it, because it's kind of hard to see. So the way this works, when I put this on your screen, you can see my screen. But that's the wrong screen. So I can't figure out, which is frustrating to me. I can't figure out how do I choose which screen I show. So this never works. But so I'll continue to work on that. But the next one we're going to create is this will be object BigLeg underscore move. Okay. So this will be the moving one. This one will move back and forth. When it hits the wall, it just inverts its direction. We'll use the same BigLeg sprite, this one here. But this one actually has some events associated with. What we want to happen is when we start this, put this monster in the room, or when it gets created, we want it to start moving. So we're going to add a create event. So when this monster gets created, what do? Well, we want to get it moving. So if we type in move, there's one of these that allows you to move randomly, and that's this one, set direction randomly. So we do that first. And we're going to choose either this one or that one. It'll randomly roll the dice, I guess, or flip the coin, I guess, and go one way or the other. We already initialized the random number generator, or have we? I don't think we have, actually. So we're going to have to do that. But we'll set the direction randomly, and then we'll also set the speed. How fast should these things move? I found a good speed was about 5. Okay, 5 divides evenly into 20, and it seems to be slow enough to make the game a little bit harder. So that's how we want it to move. when it starts out. We also have to make sure that the parent is set to object BigLeg. Not this one. That's the small one. This one. Okay. And now when this one gets created, it'll start moving back and forth. But it does imply that we have to add a collision event for the wall so that we go the other way. So let's add that too while we're in here. We'll say add event, collision. There's collision. When we collide with the wall, when this monster, BigLeg move, collides with the wall, what we want to do is we want to reverse our horizontal direction. So we would say reverse, I guess. See that one? Reverse. So choose that one. And this is horizontal, so we're going to reverse horizontally. So when it hits the wall, it just turns around and goes the other way. Okay, so again, this is the collision event between object BigLeg move and the wall. Okay. Last thing we want to do is create the moving small one, the small monster. So here we would say object. This is kind of weird. BigLeg underscore small move or small underscore move. Okay, so that name is kind of long. Object BigLeg small move is a smaller version of the BigLeg that moves. Which sprite do we use? We'll use the small sprite. Now, do we have to create a create event for this monster that gets it start moving? The answer is no, because we're going to set the parent. We're going to set the parent to the one that moves, the bigger one that moves, and it already has a create event. This one, object BigLeg move. That's whose parent it should be, and it will inherit that create event. And then, if you look up here, there's a create event and a collision with the wall event. See, those are already there, but you didn't put them there. How did they get there? Well, you'll note that they're grayed out. You can't really change them. If I try to open them, I guess it does let you open them, surprisingly. I didn't think it would do that. But those are grayed out, and the reason why they're grayed out is because they're defined on the parent. They're not defined at this level. They're defined at another level. So that means you don't have to write them. It'll just inherit those from the parent. Pretty cool. All right, so I guess that's it. Let's try it. So how do we try this? Well, I guess we just have to put them in the room, I guess. So I'd put them relatively low in the room for this test room because it takes a while for Pop to get enough juice to jump up to the top of the screen. So maybe grab the BigLeg one. We'll put it relatively low. Here's the BigLeg small. Here's the moving one. That one moves back and forth. And then this is the small one that moves back and forth. Okay. So just put one of each in there so we can test it to see if it works. Okay, so the expectation is these won't move, these two on the left won't move, but these will move back and forth. Let's try it. Okay, you see that two of them are moving. That's good. And then what I'm trying to do is get the star to collide with them. Right, about here is where I lost my audio. But what I'm giving it a try is I'm trying to see if the squids move back and forth, and they do. Notice that there's no interaction yet between Pop and the squids, and so we need to add a collision event to Pop. So we go over to Pop, and we add that collision event. I think that's what's next. Like I said, I'm recording this voiceover after I made the video, so that's why it doesn't match up very well. So we add our collision event, and we're colliding with, well, here we have a choice of 4 different big legs. We're going to choose the first one, object big legs, because it's the parent of all the other ones. By doing that, then we only have to specify this collision once rather than 4 times. And again, it shows us the power of parents and inheritance in GameMaker. All right, so we're an object pop, collision event with object big legs. Now what do we want to do? Well, I guess we just want to destroy the big leg object. That's the other thing. So make sure you go in here and click on that little arrow thing and choose other, because we want to destroy the other thing that was collided with. You don't want to choose object big leg because that will destroy all the big legs in the whole entire room, and you don't want that. All right, so we have this collision event occurring. Let's try it and see if the big leg monsters disappear when Pop collides with them. Okay, so here's the window. It's already destroyed one of them. You need to get a little bit more height to get the other ones. So remember when Pop hits the paddle, he gets a little extra energy each time. And so it looks like it's destroying the squids. And notice how it's destroying even the small ones, even though we don't have a specific collision event specified for the small ones or the large moving one. It still destroys them, which is good. I guess the next step here is to, when you get rid of all the squids, you're supposed to move on to the next room. So let's try that. What we need, though, is a way to count the number of squids. So here's where we actually probably need to create a controller. Just like we did in some earlier games, the controller is a good place to do this kind of work. We could maybe use Katch to do this because there's only one Katch per room, but just to be safe, I'm thinking the best choice here would be to actually use an object controller here. So let's try that. So we're going to create a new object. Now remember, with controllers, you don't need a sprite. So when we create that, again, it's not syncing with the video yet. I'm still talking about something else. I'm not sure what. Okay, so let's see if I ever make the controller. Okay, so here I am, hopefully creating a controller. Create object, and then what do we want to call it? Again, this is object controller, or obj_controller. Yeah. So you make a controller. It doesn't require a sprite because it's just in the room, but it doesn't interact with anything directly, so it doesn't need a sprite. What event do we want to use for counting up the number of squids to see if it's 0? We need a step event. The step event happens every frame, and so you go to the step event here, and what you'll get is every frame. This will run, and it will count up the number of squids, and if it's 0, it will go to the next room is what we want it to do. So we have our step event. We go over here. What do we want to do? Well, we want to count. So type the word count here in the search field, and there's count. So drag that out. And this will count up. Well, we have to think about it. What do we want to count? We want to count. So get instance count. How do you do that? I lost my battery, so hang on just a sec. So we're getting the instance count. Lost my audio there for a second. Drag that on. What are we counting? Well, we want to count all the different types of big legs, but because we set these up in an inheritance hierarchy, we can just count this big leg and we'll count the other ones as well, which is another reason why it's cool to have inheritance. But here we say object big leg. We're going to make a temporary variable called num_big big legs. Make sure to click on the temp thing, because you don't want to create this new variable for every controller you might think. We only want this temporarily to be there while we're counting in this one event handler. Once this event handler is over, we want this to go away. So the number of big legs, and now we have to ask one of those if questions. So if, so we just use this one, if variable. Well, we just created that variable. It's called num big legs. So you can copy the variable you made here and paste it in here, or you can type it again. But make sure you spell it the same. And if that's equal to 0, I kind of like to be a little bit more careful. Say for some reason count gives you a negative number. If it gave you like -5, it won't be equal to 0, so it won't stop the level. So I usually try to be a little bit more careful, and I say less than or equal to 0. I know it's probably never going to happen that you get a negative number from this, but you never know. I didn't write it, so I don't know. So if that's true, if it's 0 or less than 0, then we just want to go to the next room. So we say next room. So we say next. Okay. Next room. Drag that to the right of the if statement. But this causes a problem. Let me show you the problem. Okay. I'll get rid of all the big legs. Ooh. And then we'll see if we go on to the next room. And what we find is that it doesn't go to the next room. Does anybody know why it doesn't go to the next room when I kill all the big legs? Yeah, what's that? Yeah, there's that problem, yeah, but there's another problem. See, my expectation here is there is no next room, so it should crash, right, because there isn't one. But, see, I killed them all, and I didn't even crash. It should have crashed right there, because there is no next room. But it didn't. And the answer is, and I do this all the time. I was kicking myself the other day doing this. I've got this controller. I spent all this time building it. Then I forget to put it in the room. Yeah, so it's not controlling anything. Okay? So make sure the controller's in the room, or it's not going to control the room. Okay, so let's try that again. And this time it should crash. I actually want it to crash. That's weird. Normally I don't want it to crash, but when I predict things, I guess. Okay, so here we go. Let's see if I can clear these evil squid things. So it takes a while to get enough momentum up to get pop to go up the screen. Let's see if I can kind of channel it. There it is. Okay, and I crash. Okay, so that was Devin saying, "Hey, it's going to crash because we don't have this is the only room." So we have to put some safety code in when we do that. So let's go back to that controller thing. We can't go to the next room because we're on the last room. Okay, so if you type the word last up here, there's an if statement that says if room is last. See, we can use that. So I would drag that and put it right. I put it right on top of this one. And it says, well, we don't want to do this if the room is the last room. We want to go to the next room if it's not the last room. So we click on the word not here. But still, that's not going to control that. See how the line goes this way? It's not coming out of the bottom. So you got to drag this to the right side of the if statement. If this room is last, if not last, then go to the next room. Okay? So that's cool. So now we're not going to crash. But what should happen if you are in the last room and you kill the last squid? Anybody know what happens there? What was that? Yeah, you won. So you tell them they won. So we say else, because they're on the last room, they killed the last squid, we just figured that out. So in the case where it's not the last room, or where it is the last room, we drag that to the bottom of if, so they're at the same level, see that. What do we want to do? Well, we're going to be negative this time. We're not going to tell them they won. we'll tell them this. We'll say, well, we have to execute code. Execute code. Because we don't have a little window. They used to have a little window that you can pop up. In Windows, you can still use this old function, but you're not supposed to because on other platforms, this isn't there. If you try to do an Android thing or a Linux box or a Mac game, this function is not there. So it's only there in Windows land. Okay, so what is the command then? Well, we used it once before. Let me see if I can get this to, so we can actually see it there. You would say show message. This one here, show message. And we want to say, what message do we want to show? So inside the parentheses in double quotes, we would say, well, say, you didn't lose like you usually do. So you don't win in this game, you just didn't lose like you usually do. Okay? So it's sarcastic and nasty. Now you got to be careful with messages like this because some people go find the programmer and they take their frustrations out on the programmer, or perhaps on the program, or perhaps on the machine they're playing the program on. But yeah, be careful with these kind of messages. So very sarcastic. And you don't have to say that. You can say you win. That's a little bit easier to type, but I'm just being silly. Feels like a Friday. I get silly on Fridays. Okay, so, and then probably what should happen is you want to restart the game. So you say restart, right? They won. What do you do now? Well, you could end it, or you could just restart it. So we'll just restart it. Little circle thing. Okay, so let's see if that works. I'm going to see if I can win, or at least not lose like I usually do, and then see if it restarts. Or it keeps putting my window on the wrong screen, so I have to drag it over. Okay, let's see. Ooh, I'm good. There. It says, you didn't lose like you usually do. Okay? And then you say OK, and then it restarts. Yay. Okay? So now we haven't tested it with, we don't have another room yet, but at least now we know that the end game kind of works. So we just finished end game too. We've got the squids working. We got pop bouncing off correctly. We've got what happens when pop hits the squids, and then also took care of end game. So that's good. So we're going to take like a 5-minute brain break, and then we're going to pick up from there and do the next part, which is we're going to start talking about blocks. Now, if you're having an issue right now, so the next part we're doing today is the walls, or not the walls, but the blocks. We're looking at blocks. And we're going to use the same parent power that we used before here. But first we need to create our sprites. So let's create 2 sprites here. Say create sprite. We're going to do our first block. So we're going to call this one SPR underscore block underscore 1. So this will be our first block. And this one will actually be our parent block too. So we don't have to do a million different collisions. Because there's really nothing different between the first 7 blocks. They're just different colors. That's the only difference. So here we'll import that block. You can see that the colors are different, but they're all worth the same amount. You just give you some color because it's supposed to be rainbow reef, right? So it's got a lot of colors. So here's block 1. It's the one we want. It's not animated, so we don't have to do any animation. And it's 20 by 40, so it's kind of a strange. But leave the origin up at the top left corner. We also want to make the sprite for block 2. So again, we'll create another new sprite. and we'll call this one sprite block underscore 2. And we'll import that sprite, block 2. All right, cool. Now we have 2 blocks we can use in our game, but first we have to make objects out of them. So let's make those objects now. Here, we'll create block 1. This is object block 1, not the sprite. Block 1. We'll create that sprite, or use the sprite we just created, I mean. And we have to make sure that it's solid. Now, one of the things we don't want to do is have to tell Pop that when he hits one of these blocks that he should bounce off it. We already have that for wall. So if we set sprite block 1's parent to wall, then we'll get the bouncing behavior for free. So this is kind of like a wall that disappears after you hit it. So I would use the wall sprite as the parent, or not the wall sprite, but the wall object as the parent, so that it bounces off of it. Okay? So again, a couple things you have to do with block 1. You've got to make sure it's solid. You also have to make sure it's a child of wall. And then we'll also make block 2 while we're at it. So let's do that. But again, we won't have to specify much for block 2 because we're just going to rely on block 1 to do all the work for us. So here, object block 2, you do have to say it's solid. You have to do that. But then that's all you need to say, other than you set the parent to object block 1. And now Pop will treat block 2 just like it treats block 1. So what should happen when block 1 is collided by Pop? Well, we just want the block to disappear, I guess. Eventually, we'll update the score as well. Let's go back to block 1. Now, you have a choice here. Usually, you have a choice. Well, all the time between a collision, you have a choice to put your code on the one side or the other. And so you could either put it on the object block 1, or you could put the code on object Pop. We're going to put it on block 1 because of this inheritance setup with wall. It works better if you put the collision over on this side. So here we're on the block, and we're saying when the block collides with Pop. Well, the block's not moving. It's Pop that's moving, but you can still put the collision over on this side. So we want to say object Pop. When block 1 collides with object Pop, I guess moving doesn't matter. So what do? Well, what we want to do is destroy ourselves, I guess, because we're doing this from the point of view of the block. So we say destroy again. And we just say destroy self. It's already set to self. See, it's already set there. We don't want to destroy Pop. We just want to destroy self. So the hope is that when Pop hits the block, let's get that in the room, and I'll tell you what the hope is. Okay. So I'm going to put some of these blocks in. Now try not to overlap these blocks. If you do one of these alt things and just draw a line, it'll overlap. Well, it's not doing that now. That's actually pretty cool. The old version would have all the blocks overlap, but now it doesn't look like it's doing that. And then we can also put block 2s in there as well. So maybe I put a row of block 2s. Ooh, block 2s. Oh, my block 2 doesn't have a sprite yet. I better put that sprite on there. Don't forget the sprite. And make sure it's solid. Make sure its parent is block 1. Okay, so now I can put the block on there. So maybe I do that. Ooh, I don't want to cover up my... So I put my... I'll put my controller down here so I don't overwrite it. Well, that's kind of nice. So it's kind of like a brick wall. Now this is a little bit low because pop will hit it right away and doesn't give the user a lot of time to react. But we'll see what happens. So that's a little bit aggressive, I think. Okay, so let me bring that over here so we can see it. Oops. The closer you put that first row, the harder it is to play this game. Yes, fine. Yeah. Oop, I lost. So I got to get it past these walls to be able to go kill the squids. Now, when you first start out, there we go. You're trying to get it past these walls. There we go. Okay, so and notice the goal is not to get rid of all the blocks; it's to get rid of all the squids. What I wanted to mention here was notice how with the yellow ones it bounces off them, and we didn't put a collision. We didn't actually create a collision event between pop and block 2 because it's just inheriting that from block 1. And the other thing we're inheriting is this ability to bounce off. Block 2 also bounces off, or pop bounces off block 2 because it's a wall, because block 2 is a child of block 1 and block 1 is a child of wall. So we're getting 2 behaviors for free. Now, be glad that you don't have to put a collision event between every type of block because there's 7 different colored blocks here. One thing we haven't done that I forgot to mention in the last class, I'll have to do that, is if you play the game, you'll note that pop always starts out at the same angle when it starts. So let's watch it. We'll play a few times, and I bet you it's always the same block that gets destroyed first. Sorry, you can't see that, but it's always the same behavior. Okay, I've just see how that pattern. If I stop it now and I play the game one more time, we see that even though we're randomizing, or we're setting the direction to random location, we're going to see that same behavior every game. See, I haven't moved my pop object, and I'm getting the same path. And it shouldn't be doing that. So what's the problem? And the problem is we forgot to randomize our random number generator. Now that we have a controller, we can do that. So here in our controller, not in the step event, but add a create event to your controller. So when the controller is first created in the room, we have to seed the random number generator with something more random than 0. And the one we want to use is called Randomize. So let's see if that's this one here. So drag that in. And what the computer will do there is it'll go out and read something from somewhere that's more random, like maybe how many milliseconds have passed since midnight or something. Use that number to seed the random number generator so you don't get that same sequence each time. There's only one random number generator in the game, so if we go and try it now, we should get a different pattern. So I'm just going to let it play, and you'll note that we get a different pattern now, okay? Because the game has been randomized. So that's better because you don't always get the same behavior every time the game starts. Okay. So what you should be doing the rest of the class period is making the other tiles. The only difference is that there are different colors. Everything else is the same. Oof. There, I finally got it through the back. Okay. All right. So what do you have to do? What I would recommend is just, I guess you're going to have to create the sprites one by one. Then I would create the objects. But when you create the objects, you could just right-click and say duplicate. you would certainly switch the sprite, but here you'd say this is object block 3, let's say, and then you use block 3 sprite. I don't have one yet, but everything else is the same though. It's still a child of block 1, and it's still solid. So when you duplicate, you don't forget things, but do change the sprite. And you want to do that for blocks 1 through 7, because if you look at the blocks up here, if I actually make a sprite for block 3, here's block 3, create sprite. Here's block 3. Then the only thing you have to change after you duplicate is the name, I guess, and here which sprite you're using. For the first 7 sprites. Why does it say sprite 8? Sprite 8. No, it's sprite 3. Oh, I see. I forgot to rename it. Okay, it's been renamed. What's nice is when you rename something, it also renames it down here, so you don't have to change it. And now we can put block 3s in the room. Okay. And so you can make colorful patterns with these blocks, but again, the blocks colors doesn't really matter. They're all worth the same, and they all do the same thing. They're just different colors. Now later on, we're going to have blocks that do power-ups or power-downs. And then in this game, you're going to have to add your own power-up or power-down yourself. So you can come up with your own power-up or power-down, and then you can do things like invert gravity or for a time. Or you can make pops so he doesn't bounce, he just plows through walls, or something like that. But make some kind of power-up for pop or for the game. You can make Katch a lot bigger, let's say, for a power-up. That would be interesting. But we'll talk about that once we get closer to the end of the game. So that's all I had for today. Hey, we've got blocks going. Just finish up the rest of the blocks through block 7, and then you'll be ready to start what we do next time.